Very good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. Thank you, India Employer Forum, for giving us the opportunity. We have a very good gathering of panelists. I'm sure the topic is absolutely pertinent. Everyone loves it when we're talking about freedom from unemployment. Who doesn't like that? So I'm sure there will be a lot of good conversation amongst our panelists, and we do have great audience registrations. We're expecting loads of questions from all of you. So we are definitely looking forward to absolutely interactive webinar today. So to begin with, let me set the context. So when we're talking about freedom from unemployment, so India has a large informal sector with over 80% of the workforce employed in the informal sector. This informal sector lacks job security, social security, and is not fully supported by existing labor laws. In order to address this issue, the Indian government has implemented various programs, including the proposed new labor codes. However, the progress has been slow, and there is a need for further efforts to expedite the formalization of the workforce. The objective of the webinar is to discuss the need to optimize the cost, quality, and quantity of the people, supply chain, and focus on improving the quality of life and working condition of our labor force. This webinar aims to provide a platform for industry experts and policymakers to share their insights on the current status of the workforce in India, the challenge faced in formalizing the workforce, and the need to focus on skill development to consolidate India's position as the skill capital of the world. Aren't we proud about that? So this is an opportunity to also welcome our great panelists. Let me introduce them first. So our first speaker is Parag Parante. Welcome, Parag.
Thank you.
So Parag is the Group CHRO at RJ Corp, parent company of Barun Beverages, Devyani International, franchisee of Yum Foods, Costa Coffee, Wango, and Creambell Ice Cream. Parag completed his post-graduation in PM and IR from TIS Mumbai in 1988. In his 35 years of career, he has worked in leadership positions with brands like Cadbury India, Thomas Cook, Vanjan ICICI Venture. Prior to joining RJ Corp, he was working with Aditya Birla Group, initially as the group head for talent staffing and employee relation, and later as CHR of Grasim. So good to have you, Parag.
Thank you so much, Runa. Really honored to be here.
Our pleasure, Parag. So our second speaker is Radhika Arora. Radhika is the Group Chief People Officer of Jackson Group. In addition to HR, she also heads Administration and Facility Management, EHS, Environment, Health, Safety, and CSR for the group. With a total 20 years of work experience in HR, Radhika is a change leader, a problem solver, and an enabler of personal and professional excellence. She has special interest in HR, digitization, talent skilling, and diversity agenda. Prior to Jackson, she was associated with giant energy public sector company, Bharat Heavy Electricals Limited, for a decade, and with Sony India for 7 years. Wonderful, Radhika. So good to have you. Welcome, Radhika.
Thank you, Runa. Thank you. And thanks for the opportunity.
You're most welcome. So we have Gaurav. Welcome, Gaurav. So Gaurav Sabarwal, he's the CEO of Joy of Performance, is an experienced business leader with a passion for enhancing team performance. With almost 2 decades of experience, he guides global organizations as a growth partner, addressing issues like unclear goals and unaligned teams. A certified OKR coach, Gaurav's entrepreneurial journey began at 19 years while studying finance at NYU's Stern School of Business, shaping his drive as an entrepreneur. In fact, I'm a big fan of Gaurav. Welcome, Gaurav.
Thank you, Runa. And my apologies. I was having a big problem with Zoom. It started updating and whatnot, but here I am. Thank you so much, and really happy to be here and collaborate for this very important matter that we are discussing today.
Absolutely, Gaurav. We all know when we are talking about unemployment, there are definitely tremendous amount of technology support, and sometimes technology gives its wings. All right. So it doesn't matter. I think we're all here on time, and it's a great opportunity to learn from you. So I'm going to put a few questions as a moderator of the session. And my name is Dr. Runa Maitra. I'm sure you all know by now because I'm such a great actually fan of IEF India Employer Forum, and we had been doing this events every quarter. And of course, we are talking about how to support, the employment issues, how to mitigate the issues. So we have this webinar with loads of responses from our, eminent panelists. So my first questions to all of you: considering India's demographic advantage of a young and expanding working age population, why do you think unemployment remains a significant obstacle? What are the underlying factors contributing to this issue? So I'll go to Parag first, and then I'll go to Radhika and Gaurav.
Thank you, Rona. This is a very interesting paradoxical situation in our country, as we know. On one hand, in the organized sector, and I'm sure my colleagues here who are from the organized sector and big companies will tend to agree with me, that on one hand, we are really, really short of skilled manpower. And on the other hand, we always hear about the unemployment problem in the country. So this is a very paradoxical situation, and this is going on in India for quite some time. This subject is very close to our heart because we are in the process, we are in the business, we create employment, and we drive the employability in the country in different ways. Okay, not only just in our job, but in number of other ways that we are associated with the society or with the education institutions and so on and so forth. The biggest problem, and this will be the recurring theme in whatever I'm going to say in this session, and that is the lack of skilled manpower at the levels and industries we need them. So we have a lot of people, but unfortunately, we don't have skilled manpower. And that appears to be the root problem, to me at least, when I see at this issue. On one hand, and it's not just industry I'm talking about, even in the agriculture. I know the situation in agriculture that during the season, let's say a paddy season or a sugarcane cutting season and so on and so forth, you actually don't get labor which is required to do the harvesting of the produce. It is very difficult to get labor, because they have either migrated to cities or they don't want to work hard, or there are many young generation particularly who don't want to go into that profession, what their parents or their forefathers were into that profession. So there is a big imbalance in our societal structure of the roles, jobs that people aspire and the jobs that are there, that are available. And because of that, the skilling is also skewed. And a vast majority of our population of young people who are employable are unskilled. So this is one reason I think is going to be the recurring theme, as I mentioned. But now, I over to other colleagues of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we are definitely talking about all the sectors and the mismatch of job available and skill available. So, Radhika, your views.
So I can't agree more, so it's the major skill mismatch, which we see all the time. Other than that, I feel some bit of jobs are getting lost, or I can say there is less jobs available because of somewhere technological disruption also. A lot of routine jobs which people were doing. Today, there are machines available to do it, especially in the customer service segment, etc., etc. Then I still feel that with a lot of efforts on inclusion and gender diversity, still we have gender disparity, and a significant portion of our women folks are still not getting into the mainstream of jobs because of so many reasons we all know, societal norms and biases and whatnot. And another factor which I feel is also about regional disparity. Our jobs, if we look at our entire country, they are not, especially in the formal sector, they are not evenly distributed. So a lot of times our youth has to leave their villages or class B towns, class T, and come to places here which they are not willing to do. So probably if the distribution of jobs can become slightly evenly distributed, then also to certain level we'll be able to solve this problem. Having said that, major issue is with skill mismatch and our education system, which really needs a big haul up. Yeah.
I think three pertinent points you
Got it.
mentioned. One is that, yeah, Gaurav. So I was just paraphrasing Radhika's three pertinent point. One is, of course, that there is a huge women workforce. Probably they are still untapped. What a brilliant point you mentioned, Radhika. None other than from a women leader like you. And secondly, you're talking about regional disparity. I totally agree with you. Look at our Manhattan, Gurgaon. So much movement is happening there. And of course, we are looking at also how do you, dissipate the regional disparity. I think, Gaurav, you as an entrepreneur, your point of view will be fantastic. And especially when you have worked majorly in US and also, you have bridged the gap between, Western country and India. So we're really good to know your viewpoint.
I think both Parag and Radhika have covered that extremely well. Not sure how I add after this, but let me add my 2 cents, right? So I think what Radhika said about the technology disruption, this is just a start of it. There is much more which is going to come in the next 5 years or so. And while today's technology, yesterday was something else, tomorrow there is going to be something else. In my view, I need to plan better as a nation. We need to plan better in our different sectors that we are in, and how government and private sector can play a role in that planning of the demand and supply and reskilling, because whenever there is a disruption or a technology advancement happen, there is going to be requirement of a reskill and an infrastructure required for that. So who is that institution? Who are those people who are going to, take note of that and do something prior to when it is required is extremely important. And I think that part somewhere, to my mind, is missing in our nation. And if we can build that up, that will be beautiful. Maybe it's too far-fetched to even think like that, but in my view, that could be one of the solutions. But yes, the problem persists.
Fantastic. I think thank you for putting a completely different perspective. And normally we think especially Radhika mentioned about education and availability of skill. We normally look at corporate and how to bridge the gap between corporate and academia. But I think Gaurav's point of bringing the government and putting that structure together, I think that was a brilliant point. My next question to you all would be, when we talk about skill development, entrepreneurship, and education are crucial components in addressing unemployment. Could you share specific examples of successful initiatives or programs in India that have effectively empowered individuals and improved their employability prospects? So I'll go to Radhika first, if you can put some highlights on that.
Multiple programs, of Government of India. I would want to give a specific example of NSDC. So while I was in Sony, we did this program with NSDC. NSDC is National Skill Development Council. So our structure, Sony India, we sell consumer electronics, and we have a lot of multi-brand stores also and standalone stores, which are our dealer points, where we have in-store promoters, people who sell on the dealer's point. So we had done this program in association with NSDC, where this 6 months program was structured on selling skills, kind of consultative selling for these 12th pass and graduates. And they did this certification course. We certified them as a joint certification between Sony and NSDC, and we could absorb all these people. So this is one example, and I think with most of the companies this is happening, this government bodies, and especially NSDC I feel is doing a good job. Then we have Skill India Mission, we have Digital India, and we have host of government schemes. NATS, NAPS, I feel is also working good, especially government giving this benefit, monetary benefit also probably is encouraging a lot of corporates to get into this. It's a dual thing. Of course, the youth is getting employed. At the same time, there is some give back by the government to the employers. That is also helping. Yeah.
So Gaurav, your point of view, an example?
Yeah, I think there are multiple initiatives which have been taken by the government, and not just as a center, but even at state level and even at sectorial level. So, I mean, Radhika has named a few. There are a few which the Prime Minister itself has started. There is a Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, which is getting a lot of traction today at the grassroots level. And there are multiple of these. I think what is important is that how do we make aware of these programs to the public or to the audience which requires it the most? Is it in time and when they require it? What are the distribution channels of someone to even understand them? Are these being distributed right at the university level, at the organization level, and how are people being aware of it? I think that is the distribution, to my mind, is more important than just starting these initiatives, because there are plenty, but I don't think people know them, people understand them, and thus do not utilize them to their best.
And you know what, not only to the general public, the beneficiaries of the scheme, even the corporates are not aware. A lot of programs, even as corporates, we don't know where to go, where to tie up. Like Parag was mentioning, as employers, we have a lot of requirements, both at the, so ours is an infra and power company. We have requirements in the manufacturing units. We have a technical manpower requirement in the project sites. But when it comes to really hiring those people, I don't know where to go. Other than these diploma colleges or the degree colleges. So probably awareness to us about these initiatives would also be important. Yeah, I spoke out of turn, but I just wanted to append Gaurav's point. Yeah.
In fact, Radhika, that is what we want all of you to discuss, not a question answer session at all. I think your point is so valid. And in fact, my response to your viewpoint was, I'm sure there are hundreds of registration which has happened and loads of them will be listening post this event. They should pick up this point and come forward and collaborate with corporates like you. In fact, I was just thinking of, your point is so valid, and thank you, Gaurav, for bringing that up, because being an entrepreneur, it matters how you look at stuff critically and also guide and put some demand. I think that was very, very good point. With same question, I'll go to Parag, because Parag, you have such a vast set of, verticals. So many SBUs are there in your group, and there must be a different set of experience in each one of them. So please pour those and do not hesitate. We have time. Please share your experience.
Yeah, sure. Not only in this group, but even in earlier, when I was in Aditya Birla Group, it's a vast manufacturing organization. And even in the past, I worked with manufacturing organizations. I must tell you that one of the biggest problems in manufacturing industry in this country is lack of availability of skilled manpower. In fact, we are worried because the generations which were working in the past are now slowly retiring. They are fading away. And there is no new generation which is coming up to take their place. And on one side, we have Make My India and a huge initiative like PLI and some other programs which government runs. And on the other hand, there is such an acute shortage of manpower. Radhika has very aptly mentioned about regional disparity. So some states will declare some incentives and all the industry will run there to grab those incentives. That creates further disparity, and we don't have. So one example I want to give of a great program that started in early 50s maybe, and it is just now not as effective as it was earlier. And that is our apprenticeship program in ITI. So ITI has been such a backbone of skilling the young people and providing skilled labor to the manufacturing industry in this country. It has been really a big backbone. In fact, most of the companies, if you look at in the organized sector, would insist on recruiting people who are ITI passed, you know, and there are variety of programs and skills they can acquire during ITI training, and then there is a industry participation. There is a law which specifies very clearly that industry has to take ITIs in their company and train them up. And thereafter, they are so well trained that there is no option for the industry but to absorb them. They're really skilled people. Now, if you look at the situation of ITIs in the country, many of them are really in a very shabby, very bad situation. There is no upgradation of the technology and the equipment and so on and so forth. There is no funding. Many private companies, including in ABG, I remember, we had sponsored ITIs. We had taken over the ITIs. And we told the government that we will take over the ITIs and we will run those ITIs. I know hundreds of corporates who run their own skilling initiatives. For example, in RJ Corp, as you mentioned rightly, RJ Corp runs huge amount of skilling initiatives. Every year, literally hundreds of young people and women and young girls are trained in our skilling centers, our vocational training centers in Gurgaon, and they are offered to the industry, literally hundreds of them every year, and we give it to them. The entire education is for free. There is no fees. We pick them up from the homes by buses. We bring them to our skilling center. We train them and we send them back. So many companies like this, like RJ Corp is doing, are doing similar work across the nation. But the demand is so huge that it is still insufficient. And as I said, so there is another problem which I want to bring about, which is, I'm sorry, I'll take a moment more, Rona, I hope that's okay. Yeah, and that is a cultural problem in India. Culturally, we have seen over years that people are unwilling to do manual work. It is being frowned upon, and even now that continues. Everyone looks for a white collar job. They want to go to an AC office. They want to, do different type of desk job and so on. Okay, but nobody is willing to do the manual work, and that is why the trades, the trades where the skilled manpower is required is missing, and that this plays our cultural upbringing plays a major role. Gaurav mentioned he worked in US for a long time, and we have experience there, which is the labor is respected at whatever level. At whatever level, people become electricians or plumbers, and they earn butchers, and they use huge amount of money, actually, more than perhaps the white collar jobs, and they are respected. So this respect for manual work is missing in our country culturally for years together. Unless we do something to restore that pride in the work, the labor, it will be difficult for driving young people to the skill jobs or the trade jobs that are required. Sorry, that's my different perspective.
Passionately mentioned and absolutely bang on, because this is something we also all the time talk about, that the culture is important. As in India, we have definitely these issues, and people like you, all mentors like you, I'm going to definitely say that would drive the point and bring that forward. In fact, lots of such questions are coming up in mind. Besides bridging the gap between what's required for skill development, as well as the example, I think Radhika gave a very, very beautiful example. Parag, you gave about Aditya Birla, and Gaurav, of course, we are very interested. Where do you see in your experience, because you are a serial entrepreneur, you had been dealing with a lot of technology. Gaurav runs multiple organizations. So at the age of 19, he started, and now he has loads of them to talk about. So I think Parag already made a point that, Gaurav, you have seen probably some gap and mitigation of gap. Can you highlight a few before I go to the next question?
So I think the gap is, to my mind, more distribution than the demand supply. I think there is enough supply. Yes, of course, there is high demand, as Parag said, and the supply has to match up to it. But I think the more and more distribution and awareness is created, I think we will be able to fill that up. I come from a OKR philosophy of working, so I don't know how much of our audience know about that, or how much is this being used here. But in the US, at least, I've seen that a lot of these initiatives, a lot of there is climate initiatives which is going on. John Doerr is one of the big proponent of the climate initiatives, and the way these guys functions, if something we can learn, is how to create those objectives and target on the top, bring it to tangible key results, like what is it that will really move the needle on these initiatives, and then the actions to take in order for us to get to those targets. If we are able to somehow create OKRs, way of working, and a systemized framework way of working into these initiatives as well, I think this can help us a lot as a nation, and as something that we are struggling with. And just on this platform, I am ready to give that help. We have a lot of consultants who help, a lot of technology that can help with that. So anybody and everybody who is concerned about this and wants to take an initiative, I am willing to give that understanding as well as a platform for us to work on it and kind of create a better environment, which is much more tangible, objective, and for us to get closer to our goals that we want to get to. So that is something I think could help, in my view.
Absolutely, thank you. And that's where probably my next question is, when all of you are talking about being aware, being no clarity around how to bridge the gap, and definitely good examples of your contribution as leaders. I think my next question comes across that how education plays a pivotal role in preparing the workforce for the future job market. So how can the education system in India be reformed to align with the evolving demands of industries and equip students with the necessary skills for emerging job opportunities? That's question number one. And I'm just dovetailing with that question. Do you think promoting work-based learning, WBL, and apprenticeship programs is more effective than higher education degrees? And here I would like to definitely acknowledge one fact. All the creator of this India Employer Forum, I have been part of their many initiative of doing awareness program of apprenticeship. In fact, just as recent as the day before, I was in Bangalore and I was actually part of an event in Taj, and the next door was Team Lee's program on apprenticeship. So delighted to say that, when we're looking at these initiatives, yes, for decades it's happening, but as Radhika, you mentioned, it may not be enough. So I think your point of view on, how you would like to see the, bridge would be very helpful. So let me start with Radhika. What's your response to this question?
So I think a few points where probably there is a need to, of course, a lot is happening. Just to acknowledge that fact that even in our education system, we are talking about, this industry academia interaction, and then a lot of things being changed, and there's this overhaul happening. But I think still lots needs to be done there. One thing which I always feel should happen is we should have flexible learning paths. Every kid should not be required to follow that same academic trajectory all the time. You do 10th, you do 12th, and then now it is like even BTech is not enough. You're supposed to do MBA, then only you can get into the mainstream, etc., etc. So I think it's already happening in the US and other countries where people get options of various other courses. And in our country also it has started, but then it has to be really accepted as a norm, and it should start at an early stage, of having this kind of flexibility to the students. Then another point in terms of change, so definitely a lot of students are getting into internships, doing some projects with the corporates and all that, but I don't see a lot of credit being given for all this in their academics. So recognition of prior learning has to happen, and there has to be some formal system of giving academic credits to the kids who are doing something extra as far as their exposure to the corporate world and industries and manufacturing. And like Parag was saying, if somebody is really doing something which is a manual labor, a skill being developed and practiced, there should be some credit given in their academic courses also. Another change, we've been talking about it, but I don't know how much it is happening. We really need a lot of development for our teachers. Still, even in our schools, even in our colleges, teachers and professors are still the same. And it's high time that they get some good amount of training as to how the kids have to be skilled. So these are the few things. And another point which was coming in my mind, that we do have career counseling for the kids and who are getting into jobs, etc. But I think this career counseling has to start quite early. Quite early, maybe even before they're 12, maybe after 10th or something, so that they know what they want to really do, and they know what is the kind of
there is a little bit of disturbance, but I will just carry forward the point what Radhika was making. I think it's very important until she joins back, which is, and I have been thinking about this and wanted to mention this about the education. Sorry, Radhika, since your video froze, I took over a little bit. I will hand it back to you soon.
I was just talking and talking. Okay, please go on. Yes, thank you, Parag, for pitching in.
Yeah, so, education, for example, our education system, there are two issues there. One which Radhika touched upon, which is the quality of education in our country, or teachers in our country. Now look at this issue. Teacher is supposed to be a very noble profession, right? That's what we all have learned from the childhood. What is the incentive for young generation to become teachers? How many people want to make their children teachers? I come from a family of career teachers and professors and educationists, and I chose not to go in that direction. I went to corporate, career. Similarly, even in villages in India and district levels, if you look at the condition of schools, it is so pathetic. And the teachers, so perhaps, many a times there is one teacher for the entire school or for 5 classes. They are not well trained, they are not well paid, they are not paid in time, even if they are paid. So there are hundreds of issues of this type. And on the other hand, there are private colleges which have mushroomed everywhere, who do not bother about the quality of education. So there are factories which are just spinning out young graduates, engineers, diploma holders who are totally unemployable. And we face this on a day in, day out basis in our industry when we try to recruit people, So it is very difficult to fix this education. So first of all, we need to have a very solid incentive scheme for teachers, for young people to become teachers, and to get more prominence and more respect to that profession. And it should be made rewarding. Unless that profession is rewarding, the skill will not flow in that direction. Why people go in IT? Because it is rewarding from their point of view. They get an on-site job in US or somewhere else, or they get a white-collar job. It's more intellectual job, and Indians like that, so they go there. Similarly, in education, there is a need for creating rewarding mechanism for people to adopt education as a profession, and thereafter, obviously, fix the quality of education institutions in India with stricter controls. That's my view, actually.
Absolutely. Gaurav, you
Yeah, I've been
want to add any point?
Yeah, I've been actually thinking about this. The way I think about it is that this is where I think technology is of a great assist, and using mediums of digital. Like there is, I'm sure we all have heard about Khan Academy in the US, right? Now, when Salman Khan started that academy, it was a very modest beginning, but today it is one of the biggest examples for us to kind of emulate that and kind of work with it, right? So, how can we create certain digital channels and digital influencers in this space, of skill development? And and I'm not talking about just as philanthropy, I'm talking about even as a business, because today's young and the young population that we have, they get excited about these new startups that they can come up with. And I would like to maybe explore and challenge, then do we have startups who are solving this problem, and is there a to create a big business out of it? Young people involved and creative mind involved in technology to work together and solve this problem with, because the digital medium has the biggest reach and the most inexpensive way to reach the target audience. So if we are able to solve the problem through this medium, I think it can go vast, it can go deep at the same time with the minimum resources. And if we can club it with kind of a business environment with it, I think we can garner a lot of interest in something like this. So maybe one of the initiatives could be that can we form a pool of funding which then fund only startups which are digitally penetrating to solve this problem, because that will get people to be involved and create something which could be useful. So that just another way to think about this.
I think that's a great point. And while you're talking about, in fact, this one of the 7 pillar of this year's budget is creating digital university, penetrating digitally. So a very, very strong point, Gaurav and Parag and Radhika, when you were talking about the gaps in the education system, especially from the mentors and guides who are the teachers' point of view. I think I'll go back to my question about how would you look at promoting work-based learning and apprenticeship program? I think that's where we got little, maybe away from this question. So anything you would both want to say, especially Radhika, Parag, for this question, that have you promoted any apprenticeship program, any experience on that? We would love to know about that.
So we have apprentice in our company. We hire regular batches of apprentices, both ITI and diploma holders. We also have regular internship programs. So kind of we have really not really stopped, but we are encouraging the route of freshers hiring, So starting from internships to graduate engineer trainees or management trainees, and then they move up the ladder. So, and of course, the idea is that 3-4 years down the line, this talent funnel grows in such a way that we can minimize our, experience hiring. So these are the few things which we are doing. Plus, as a part of our CSR initiatives, of course, like Parag was also mentioning, we have also tied up with a few like Delhi Skill University and all, where we are sponsoring a few students also and mentoring them. And there are few projects which we have done with Delhi Police also, skilling the kids from the marginalized society. So multiple things are happening. But I'm not really aware of a lot of structured programs, right? These yojnas and all. Somebody was talking about this Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Yojana. So I don't know how the corporates can play a role there and how can be absorbed. So I am aware about apprenticeship programs and of course internships, etc.
So apprenticeship program, like I said, Runa, has been the backbone of industrial growth of India from 60s. Okay, when the first ITIs were set up, and big groups like Aditya Birla or even RJCOP for that matter, every year hundreds and thousands of ITI students are absorbed as apprentices. Okay, they are given training. It's a sandwich program where they are supposed to learn in the school and they are supposed to work in the plant. So for 4 years they are supposed to learn, and and thereafter they are so well trained that these companies pay a premium to get them. Okay. But like I said, this scheme over a period of time has fallen out of grace. State governments have not invested in ITI. Central government has not invested in ITIs and similar other skill programs. For example, I want to touch upon the technology evolution that's happening all around us. And there is a big debate. I'm sure all of us are very much aware of what AI can do going forward to the employment. And there is a big fear that AI will come, AI will take away jobs. Same thing was happening when computer came in this country. Okay. All the unions went on strike and said that computers will take away job. In fact, computers generated jobs. Computer generated IT sector, which was otherwise not existing in this country. Okay. And it has created millions and millions of jobs and pushed people up in the hierarchy of economic progress. Okay. So similarly, but what is so we are doing seminars and we are talking in events about AI, but I really wish that governments as well as private organizations, either in partnership or individually, come together and really develop programs for young people to learn what is AI and the skills that are involved to become AI programmer, okay, or practitioner. Just imagine the shift that's going to happen because of the technology, in the structural shift that's going to happen of the labor that is required and the labor that will be available to provide that gap. So Gaurav was saying that it is not a supply demand, it's a more of a skew, of regional skew. I do feel that there is a big supply demand issue also. There is a big demand, but the supply is not there for the requisite skills that are required. And there is a huge amount of supply for skills which are perhaps not in great demand at this point in time. So that's my 2 cents here.
Runa, just want to add, just want to add to what Parag just said, right? Sometimes we get so frustrated. So I have this agenda of, increasing diversity ratio in my company. Yeah. And ours is definitely the need of talent essentially is on the technical side. We need a lot of women folks in diploma mechanical electrical, degree mechanical electrical, and the fact still remains that I have so much requirement, but when I go to the colleges, there are hardly any females available. So definitely there is a lot of demand, but the kind of skills, or even in this case, it is the usual course, right? But still we have very few women taking these courses. And that is why every year when I hire a GT or an intern batch, I want to hire 70% women, but the supply is limited even for the core engineering courses for females. So definitely there is a skill, the demand supply gap is there.
Totally agree. So Gaurav, everyone is looking at your viewpoint, and my next question is regarding what Parag prompted. Are there any policy or regulatory barriers hindering job creation in India? What changes or reforms would you recommend to foster more conducive environment for businesses to expand and hire more workers? I think I'll go to Gaurav, because you talked about how you actually twist the whole thing and ensure job opportunities. So let this question go to you first.
So I don't think I'm a subject matter expert, at the policy level for me to really comment that what can be changed and what should be changed. I think there are many people who are much better positioned to make that decision and recommendation for that matter. However, coming back to where I can give my viewpoint is on the more private way of working, right? Because that is where I've spent the last 2 decades and been an entrepreneur and solved the problem. And I think today the government is doing the right thing, in my view, by creating that infrastructure, by creating that awareness that new and upcoming startups are coming and solving the problem. The only thing I would go deep dive into and double down is that what is being done in this specific domain to create business opportunities, to create startup opportunities. Where is the problem and how can we solve it by getting more and more people be involved in creating some initiatives, creating some creative startups in the space? Because the problem exists, right? I think we've been talking about it for the last 50 odd minutes, and we know that the problem exists. Parag, to your point, there is definitely a gap between demand and supply. So when there is demand and supply gap, guess what happens? There is room for somebody to come in and take a pie of that and create a business opportunity out of this. So I think I'm not going to comment on what can the government change or what initiatives can the government bring in, because I'm not an expert on that. However, I will be very excited, and I'm going to spend some time in the coming weeks to understand from a private business of where is the opportunity here and what can be done in the space. That I will definitely spend some time on.
Fantastic, Gaurav. And I think we have started getting questions. So before we get to the questions, kindly respond quickly, Parag and Radhika, on this one. Yeah.
No, go ahead, Radhika. You're
Yeah.
muted.
Yeah. So, Runa, I want to give a practical example here. See, job generation is directly linked to businesses setting up. Yeah. And still a lot of reforms need to be done at government level to make it easy. I'll give you an example. We've recently set up a factory in Maharashtra, and 3 months already in inception, and we are still not able to dispatch from there because there are host of compliances, so many compliances we were not even aware of, so many permissions, so many licenses. So ease of doing business has to get better, and especially when we are having a lot of international companies coming in India, setting up their base, etc., etc. We need to still look at, of course, labor reforms have to be there. We talked about labor codes in the beginning, but still for so many reasons they are yet not implemented. But otherwise also, other than labor reforms, we need a lot of regulatory compliances getting eased up for businesses so that people can easily set up their bases, and then of course a lot of employment opportunities will be generated.
Yeah. So no, similar to the views expressed here, I think they have covered it very comprehensively. Look at the Make My India initiative and the number of companies which are getting PLI bonus because of that, and they are coming in. The recent example was this Foxconn, which is going to set up a huge facility for making semiconductor chips, right? Now, if companies of this magnitude come into the country and they set up the plants for manufacturing under this scheme, just imagine the amount of direct as well as indirect job generation that is going to do in that, for that particular economy in that region, So there are many schemes which government is doing. I think private sector is playing its role continuously by expanding their capex cycles and new plants and generating employment. So I think, of course, there are a lot of initiatives, but the country is so vast and the problem is so big that it's not yet sufficient.
Thank you, Parag, Radhika, and Gaurav. So we have started already getting questions from audience. Thank you, audience, for asking very, very nice questions, and keep asking. We definitely have some time to respond to that. So the first question is, in your view, what are the key industries or sectors that have the potential to absorb the increasing number of workers entering the labor market? How can these industries be further developed and encouraged to create more job opportunities? Who will take
Sorry,
it?
can you repeat that? Somewhere in between, there was a little bit of lag. I couldn't hear it properly.
Sure. It's, in your view, what are the key industries or sectors that have the potential to absorb the increasing number of workers entering the labor market? That's first question. The same person has continued. How can these industries be further developed and encouraged to create more job opportunities. I'll put this in the chat so that if you would like to refer.
Yeah, I can go first on this. I think this is a beautiful time and a great question, actually, whoever asked this, because, with all the disruption which is happening with technology and AI, I think India is at a great stage to go back to its roots of manufacturing and agriculture. There is a big opportunity. There is a big movement in manufacturing and agriculture by the government, and the sector which may get disrupted with all these technology advancement is services, as Radhika mentioned before, and that was where a lot of workforce was focusing for the last two or three decades, right? And rightly so, because the money was moving there. There was a lot of exposure coming from the world into sector, and we became like a services hub for the entire world, right? So that there was a lot of demand for it, and we had the supply, so we were doing that. And I think those are the two sectors, which is agriculture and manufacturing, that if the right kind of attention is given to that, this can prosper and it can take in a lot of supply for the skill workforce, and there is going to be a lot of money, because again, people are not to it because of no reason, but there is going to be a lot of money to be made in these two sectors, in my view. So that is what my take on the sectors is.
I'll take the next question, and of course you can respond, Radhika or Parag, to the previous one. So I'm just looking at the time, hence I'm doing that. So the next question has come up: with the rapid advancement of technology and automation, how can India strike a balance between embracing technological progress and ensuring that jobs are not displaced, particularly in labor-intensive sectors? I'm going to put again this question on the chat for you, just in case you wish to refer. Yeah, who would like to ask?
This question is, it's a rhetorical question and a rhetorical answer, I'll say, because, this structural adjustments will continue to happen in the society. It happened in the past when India was purely agrarian economy and we became industrial economy over a period of time, and the structural change happened. So people moved from one sector to another, and there was issue when that was happening. And this is a continuous process. Okay. Now automation is coming in, AI is coming in, all kind of other technologies and digitalization is coming in. On one hand, there are many people who are finding themselves out of labor market, because they are not skilled enough to do the work that is required. On the other hand, there are millions of others who are adapting very quickly and they are coming into the labor market. So this structural imbalance is a process in society that will continue for some time, and it will actually forever, and it will never have a situation where there is a perfect balance or equilibrium in any economy, in any country for that matter. So this process will continue.
Any last comment from Radhika and Gaurav on this?
I think, jobs will keep getting created. Like Parag was mentioning earlier, everybody felt computers are coming and the jobs will go away, right? More jobs got generated. Here also with AI and all this technology disruption, maybe some jobs will become redundant, but the new jobs will emerge, right? So I think the message for all of us here is keep on investing in your development, right? And keep on unlearning and learning so that you always remain relevant in the market, and your skills should not become redundant. That's the key here.
Wonderfully said. Anything, Gaurav, you would like to mention as a parting comment?
No, I think I have said what I needed to say, so I'm good with that.
Fantastic. I think almost an hour has passed and we did not realize that. And there were many great responses, good questions from audience. So once again, I would like to thank audience. One thing emerged very, clearly from the conversation, that there is no one size fit all, as we typically say. And there is a lot of, I love the way Parag, you mentioned there is a rhetoric question, there is a rhetoric answer. So people are not actually, picking up the, maybe the hammer and putting the nail in the place. I think that's where a lot of issues are coming up. People are thinking somebody else will solve the problem, and that's why probably three of you mentioned that, hey, there is no one stakeholder in it. There are employers, there are teachers, and I think the parting comment of Radhika beautifully mentioned self-development. So we are also saying that if you want to be hired, you better get skilled. I think I somewhere, and a lot of international perspective, Gaurav, you brought in from your practice, and I think specifically all of you mentioned that yes, there is a demand from the government, and I'm sure India Employer Forum will be the conduit between the demand and supply between government to private sector. And I like the way you all put the education sector also. And I think, Parag, hats off to you for bringing the point on the how ITI should be reshaped and revamped. I think that's very important. I started my career with Escorts. That's a brilliant group I worked with, and they definitely, hired for our entire group from ITIs, and we have brilliant, brilliant leaders from there. So I think all of you gave a very strong perspective. And Radhika, when you nudged about the infrastructure, so India needs that. I think there are definitely a lot of requirement on nudging the infrastructure and developing it. I guess we had in a such reasonable time brought in most of the great points for our audience. Now it's time for audience to wake up, and they should all come together and collaborate with three of you and your peer group of leaders. And I would not, absolutely say that only for corporate entrepreneurs like Gaurav. Will be keeping on giving solution, and especially when Gaurav talked about being objective, bringing that OKR solution, and actually extended hand of giving that perspective that how to look into bringing OKR philosophy and all can bring that point. So objectivity is important, and people like you, Gaurav, when you come forward and say, hey, we are as startups, we are ready to bring on and give some solutions to you all. I think hats off to you. So thanks to Radhika, keep doing great job. We are a big fan of yours. A women leader like you should keep on demanding. When you say that when you go to colleges and we don't bring on, so I think that was absolutely great point. Thank you, Parag, for keep doing, such fantastic job, and we love you as a leader. And Gaurav, your perspective from globe to, India really helps. And once again, thank you, audience. Thank you, India Employer Forum, for giving us such a fantastic platform and continue to give that. Thank you. Have a very good day.